Alrighty, our last part to our art history unit. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. I'm trying to make this video pretty quick so that you're not having to jump around too much. Alrighty, so we left off on the indigenous art of the Americas, and this is going to include North, Central, and South American traditions before colonization. This is pre-Columbian, before European contact, which included the cultures of, or the groups of the Olmec, the Maya, the Inca, and the Nazca. Art is used as cosmology, governance, ritual, and performance. So it had a lot of spiritual meaning to it as well. It's very sacred and scientific knowledge being intertwined in visual forms. And behind us here, this is the Machu Picchu that we mentioned back in the architectural unit. And it is, a very, very, very mind-blowing piece of architecture to be where it is located at. So our first example is going to be ancestral Puebloan pottery. It's created by the ancestral Puebloans in the American Southwest. And pottery for this part of the world, like this time period, was hand foiled and painted with geometric patterns, spirals, and abstract natural forms. So this is not wheel thrown pottery. This is coiled pottery that's been hand built and then fired to a really high temperature. And then not only is it functional, but it has these like abstract designs on the outside that can represent different religion, different, symbolism, all these different things that goes beyond just it serving a function. So let me make sure this is going. Okay. It's used in rituals, food storage, and daily life. Art and function are deeply intertwined. The colors came from local clays and plant-based paints, and the firing methods controlled for pattern clarity. So there's a lot of sort of like chemistry involved in this type of pottery as well, that is overlapping these artistic processes. Often pottery is made by women, and the skills are passed down through generations through women in the family. It reflects a deep tradition with land, community, and cosmology, which is like study of the stars and study of the universe, essentially. Oceanic and Aboriginal art. This is going to be like in Polynesia, in Australia, New Zealand, sort of that little pocket of islands that we've got. There's an emphasis on land, ancestors, and spiritual worlds. And for them, art equals story, memory, and songs passed through generations. Materials for them include bark, pigment, shells, and natural fibers. So an example is this Aboriginal dot painting. Dot paintings are contemporary expression of Aboriginal dream stories. They share this kind of cosmic narrative about creation, ancestors, land, and identity. And each pattern of dots, lines, and shapes carries meanings tied to specific places, events, or spirits. So this is a very common way of making artwork. There is a lot of paintings in the Impressionist movement that we'll call pointillism that take in kind of inspiration from these artworks that were done traditionally. But yeah, really, really interesting kind of like carryover with a lot of these different like types of or regions that kind of influence European art in a later sense. And they sort of recognize it during this like abstract revolution as being more valid than it was, 200 years before. Often it's created using natural pigments like ochres and charcoal or acrylics in more recent works. Traditional designs were originally painted on bodies, rocks, and sand, and then they were adapted to canvas in the 1970s as a way to preserve and share culture. But the design aspect of it could be on a lot of different things, not just in like on a canvas, essentially. These patterns were done on, as body paint on rocks, sand, etc. And themes across our non-Western art, we see a lot of kind of connection to spirituality. Art connects the human to the divine ancestral. Community, art as a collective, not just an individual expression. Nature, it has a deep ecological awareness in forms of materials. And storytelling, both oral traditions translated into visual ones. So there's a lot of crossover with our Western artwork as well. But I think the approach to non-Western artwork is more about what is being said rather than what something looks like. And that's pretty deeply important as far as what artwork means and like how we think about art history is like it's not only something to look at, but it's a way to communicate and to share sort of a history with throughout our generations and throughout culture. And that's why a lot of people that are non-Western that are making artwork, they really don't haven't changed that much from like what their traditional values were because they see that as being sort of being connected to those ancestral ties, not like we're disconnected and we're trying to like, make something new all the time and different and, unique and individual. It's about artwork for them. It's about this community and connection and spirituality and things that connect us, not separate us, which is sort of now the idea behind a lot of Western artwork is like you have to be this individual, kind of self driven artist, not someone who is connected to multiple minds, like multiple, ways of thinking about artwork. It's just you and you alone. And if you want to reference back to our craft versus art video, there's a lot to say there that connects those ideas as well. Once we start to see in the Renaissance this need for the individual artist and sort of they're seen as like these celebrities almost, that connection really halts our Western culture from being more community based within our artwork. So, some challenges in art history. Historically, Eurocentric bias is seen in museums, textbooks, and academia. Non-Western art is often labeled as primitive or craft and not taken as seriously. And there's an underrepresentation of women and indigenous artists that has just kind of gone on for way, way, way too long, even though they've been the people who are making artwork, sometimes primarily in different cultures. But there's just like this lack of recognition for so long, which is why we needed, more modern movements like the feminist art movement and, these different movements that are really acknowledging that sort of like, casting off of them. But this underrepresentation, it really doesn't exist in the same way in non-Western art. And so it's really important to kind of look at that and see how different gender roles were divided amongst artists in non-Western culture because it's just not the same as Western culture. It's not as hard of a line dividing, who can do what, essentially. So those are some challenges. And now we really need to reconsider the canon of artwork. And the canon is traditional list of great, usually Western male artists. This is also questioning who decides what's important in art history, who has done that for so long. Traditionally, Western male artists are the ones who have decided that Western male art is, or Western male made art is the type that's important. So we really have to kind of consider, like, who's making up these rules that we've, followed for so long. Growing movement to include global and marginalized voices is really, kind of trending as well, and in a good way, to understand different ways of creating artwork and not just our one way that we know. And just to summarize and sort of recap, art history is global, interdisciplinary, and culturally rich. Non-Western art challenges us to expand our definitions of perspective. And today's lesson is a foundation for a more inclusive exploration of art. And so, as we kind of travel through this last unit together, where we're looking at art history, I want you to consider, trying not to just think about artwork the way you've already like always known it. It just, don't think about it as like the way to be a good artist or to make good artwork or how we decide artwork is good. Is it looking realistic? That's definitely something that's been sort of hammered into us throughout the years, but it's definitely not something that is universally the case. So I think it's important to look at all of these different places and kind of where artwork comes from for them. But I think that is our last slide. So I will see you guys again in module 7, and we'll continue on with this conversation and kind of get more up to date there. And then we've only got one more module after that. So we're almost there. So I'll see you guys next time and have a great rest of your day.